Hey guys, okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to add a few more breakdowns within the walk cycle, and then we're going to start splining our animation. So what spline is smoothing out the animation, because right now what we did, we blocked it out, so it looks very robotic. There's not a change in movement on every frame, so that's stepped. So eventually now what we're going to do, we're going to spline it after we add a few more poses into our animation. So I'm going to close the graph editor for right now. It opened by mistake. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to set my project folder, file, set project. I'm going to, I think this is the one, set. I'm going to open my scene. I'm going to go to my most recent iteration of Maya, of the scene file, which is, let me double check in timestamps. It's going to be this one. So I'm going to click on this one. Don't save. Continue. Ignore that. Okay. All right. So if you see, it's looking robotic because if, let me select the keys. So if you see these keys, this is a key, but in between the character isn't moving from this key frame to this key frame. It only changes when you get to this red line. So that's what stepped is. It's looking like, if I go to my graph editor, which is under Windows, animation editor, graph editor, if I look at my keys, they're not looking like curves, or like when you graph like a quadratic equation, those nice smooth rounded curves. These are looking like stairs or stepped, like you're walking on these stairs, so you take a step. So these are called step keys. So typically when you're starting out animation, you work with step keys, and then once you get like the main poses down, like what we did in the previous video, then you can start smoothing out your animation. So I'm just going to add one more keyframe at the moments where this foot is leaving the ground. I think maybe I do have it, but you know what? We should be good. I will go ahead and spline this. So I'm going to take the keys. I'm going to select all the controls. I'm going to go back to that graph editor. And I'm going to select them and hit this icon right here. It should have the letter A. So there's several types of curves or splines that you can create. What we're going to do, we're going to use just auto tangents. Or you can use different types of tangents. Right now what we have are step tangents. What you're going to do is use auto tangents. So what auto does is that at any peak, the tangents are flat, and that at any like rise or decline, it's gonna the tangent handles are gonna follow that curve. So let me just do this to show you. So I hit this key icon right here so I've selected all these keyframes, and then I clicked on auto tangent, which is right here where my mouse is. And so I'm gonna go to, let me see, I'm gonna select the hip control just to show the example, and I'm gonna go back to my graph editor, if it'll let me, or the root control. So when I select these handles, notice that they're following the handles right here. These are the handles. So these are your keys, which are the little circles, and then the lines on the outside are your handles, which you can, if you select the handle and press W and now move it, you can change how the curves are going. So this is looking pretty good. So basically what we want to do, we want to take out any hitches. Let me do a quick play blast so you can see what I'm talking about. So a great way to like how I like to what's the word? Kind of compare my animation, because my blocking tends to have the right peppy timing. If you notice, let me undo the splining or the auto tangents just to show you what I mean by that. Typically, I want my timing to be right before I start splining, meaning all those keyframes are where I want them to be. So whatever peppy or slowed out timing I want, I have them at the right keyframe. So for right now, we're gonna follow the timing, the natural timing of the walking reference that we have. So, but let me just do a quick. Let me hide my curves, and I don't know why my light is there. Let me just hide the lights. Okay, so let me make sure. Okay, there I am. That's a good. Okay, let me just move my camera a little bit to the right there. I'm gonna select my camera. In my Play Blast window, I'm going to just change the naming of the movie file. So I have blocked final, just so I can refer to this when I need to compare the smoothness of, I do have a hitch in the head, but I'll fix that when I go into auto tangent, when I start splining out. So I like the pacing of the steps at least. There's some hitches there, but again, I know I can smooth that out with how the typical graph would look within a vanilla walk. So I know we can fix that just by smoothing out the hitches, because sometimes when we're blocking things out, it looks like we've moved it at just the right amount, but sometimes we don't, and it's not until we play blast it or we spline it that we realize we can smooth it out a little bit better. So I'm going to save, so I've saved this as a separate video file just to compare and contrast to the splines that I'm working on. All right. So now I'm going to see, my preferences are in here. Okay, that's fine. So I'm gonna so to show my curves again, my controls under show, I'm gonna make sure NURBS curves is checked off, so that there's a little check box. There's a little check mark in that box next to NURBS curve where it's highlighted blue here. So I have that there now. I'm going to select these curves. It's okay if you don't get all of them, as long as you get the main body controls. You don't need to worry too much about the face controls, because we're not really doing any facial animation for this. It's just basic body mechanics of the whole, of the general form of the body. So I've selected the curves. I'm going to go back to my graph editor. I'm going to select all these curves. So I'm clicking and dragging to select them. I'm going to press auto. And then under the timeline here, I'm going to click on the box for Play Blast again. And then I'm just going to rename the movie file to first spline. And I'm going to Play Blast it. See, I have some issues here, and that's okay. So I'm going to play it. So if you notice, it's stopping and going. So that's the biggest issue. So this root control needs to be a continuous forward movement. So for that, what we're going to do, we're going to take out any of the hitches that's going on in my graph editor. So I'm going to go to my graph editor again. This time I'm just going to select, under the root control, I'm going to select Translate Z. I'm going to select these, press F to kind of zoom out a little bit better. So I'm going to get the main parts that are really causing the hitches. So I'm going to select this curve that I have right here. I'm going to hit delete. Same for this one. Just anything that's looking like I'm going to move this handle a little bit more. Anything that looks like it's causing too much of slowing down. So notice how this is rounding out. So anything, the greater the peak, so notice how, the quicker it increases in height, the more it's moving within a smaller amount of time, is what I'm trying to say. So we're just trying to take out anything that's slowing it down way too much. So here it's slowing down right here because this is a flatter curve than compared to this part of the curve right here in the beginning. So I'm just going to delete those two keys, but remember, always at least keep the first and last key because that's your start and ending of the animation. So I'm going to select this handle just to kind of make this a little bit more linear. If it'll let me. Selecting this handle, and I'm just kind of aligning it to this spline. Can maybe take these out too. Now, it's okay to have some, little waves, but there were a lot going on here that it wasn't benefiting the animation. So this is going to help the forward movement, and I can just scrub through this right now. So it's moving more forward. So if I look, I should have gotten a side play blast, but that's okay. 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 All right. Okay, so now I'm gonna work on each attribute of the main controls, and you want to start from the core, meaning the root control here, outward, and then so you're gonna start off with the root control, then the feet, then the spine, and then the shoulders and head. So work your way from inward out to the limbs. It's okay if you do like the spine before the legs, but just work inward out. So don't fix the arms when you haven't fixed the core, because the core is it's the driving force of the whole body. So this root control, the square, that's by the hips. So I'm going to go to the next attribute. I know I kind of skipped here, but because the forward movement, the Z translate, is the biggest one in terms of a walk because it's going forward. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at my X curve, and I'm just going to even things out. So I'm going to take out that, I'm just kind of making it look like kills. So I'm going to select this handle. And I'm just going to kind of and I'm going to match this negative movement. So -6. So 6. So the furthest this will go is -6. Just to keep this mirrored. So if things start being too asymmetrical, it's going to look like it's going to look like this person is walking with a limp. And since it's a vanilla walk, that's not really the case. Alright, so make this number 6 so it's a little bit more mirrored. And take this out. Smooth out the spine right here. Okay. And I'm selecting this key because it's a little off, and this is the value and this is the keyframe number. So in this right box, I'm just making sure it's 0. And I'm going to just delete this key because it's really not needed anymore. And I'm just going to select this handle now and move it so it's kind of following. And I'll make this keyframe where it says -2 right here in this right box. I'm going to make it 0 and hit enter. So notice this went up to the value of 0. Just going to move this handle so it follows. W is to move, just so you know. I'll delete this keyframe. Would make this value -6 in this keyframe. And let me just hit auto so there we go. Alright. So now I'm going to just scrub. And I'm just looking at the translate X here. Okay. Alright, that's looking good. Alright, so next one will be the Y translate. So I'm going to go to that. Ooh, what do I have here? That's odd. Alright. Okay, so we'll push this up. So I'm going to get all my down keys here, which are these. I'll just make sure that they're at the same number, so -5. This is my contact. Alright, and this is a down post too. So this will be -5 as well. Let me just make sure. Okay, so this is a contact. So this is -3. So I will make this -3 as well. Make that -3 too. So any key before these down poses right here, I'm going to select them and just make them the same number, just to kind of keep them a little bit more even. Alright. And then as for these, yeah, these need a little bit more height. So I'm going to take this passing pose Y and make sure it matches at least these passing poses, which is this one and this one. So these are about the same. So I'm just going to move this one a little bit further up so we can get a little bit more of that height, the little bit of a bounce, like the bouncing ball. You know, our core right here acts like the bouncing ball. So I'm going to move this one up as well. So this will be our extreme up. And I'm just going to make this tangent handle like follow the path of the spline right here. And I'll bring this one a little bit down so it's not too much. Alright, and this is the contact. This is passing. So I'll bring this and bring this one down. So that way we have kind of like the same change in height for all of these. And we'll move this. Alright. So scrub. Okay, that's looking, I can, just by looking at it, it's not too much bounce, but it's just enough. So I'm liking that so far. I shouldn't have too much rotate X here. I think that was just, let me just highlight all of these and make it 7. Just so it stays the same. I really don't want to change the forward tilt of the hips. So, okay, that's looking good. All right. We're having some knee pops here. Yeah, but we can, again, we'll fix that later. Okay, so now is the rotation, the rotate Y, the twist in the hips. So we are going to bring this foot a little bit further in. So this is my contact because of the heel is, this is a key where the heel of the foot is touching the ground. So I'm going to bring this a little bit further down and see if this will be a better suited for. And I'm just going to delete some of these curves just to smooth it out a little bit more. And I'm going to take this last key and type in -16. Delete some of these. And make the height of these 16. This might be too much twist. We might have to decrease this a little bit more. I'm going to delete these keys in between. So that way it should look like an M, kind of, sort of. Let me see. No, it's not looking too bad. Okay, we should be good. Alright, so now is the rotate Z. Okay, so again, it's looking a little too lopsided, so we're just going to make sure that these curves are mirrored in a way, kind of, sort of. So like at the extremes are the same and the middle is the same. So I'll take these because I know these are my contacts. I'm going to just type in, I'm going to highlight these curves that are kind of toward the middle. I'm just going to type in the number 0 and hit enter. And then figure out this extreme right here, -7. And just round that down, -7. I'm going to take these extremes, type in +7, and this negative extreme, -7, hit enter, and then I'm just going to delete these keys in the middle. Reason being that I didn't go about this the other way is that if I don't block it in, I don't at least see some type of change in movement. So it's really important to, you know, try to do it with your eye and block it in first as an artist, kind of like how the 2D artists, they would draw their key poses and then kind of flip through them. That's kind of how blocking 3D animation is, you know, only instead of paper, it's just these, it's this 3D scene. But try to look at it as these whole images and then blocking them in that way. So we smooth this out. So we can we'll do a quick play blast just to see how the hips are moving. Take the box for play blast and just change the name so that way we can always compare and contrast. So I'm gonna second spline or spline 2. That way we don't naming convention. So spline 2, enter, play blast. So if you look at it, we can compare and contrast. So this is the first one. Let me find the for spline open with QuickTime. You see how like this was like kitschy? I mean, I hope you guys can see the difference just by smoothing out the curves. Like that's really hitchy. And compare. There's still some things I maybe get more height. I think that's actually the only thing I would do is get some height a little bit quicker. Yeah. So let me see. Close this out. Close this out. Okay. So just to like compare, let me do it in track. See how this is looking. The graphic front. Okay. So what I did was an arc track just to see how things are looking. For the most part, it is because you want this butterfly looking movement in the hips, so that's looking good. You don't need to do this if you're following along. I was just double checking to see how my arcs are looking. Okay, so moving back to alright. So I can always go back and do another spline pass on the hips, but you know, you don't want to put too much detail in one go. So this was a good first pass. So now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna select the spine IK torso here. I'm gonna go to Windows, Animation Graph Editor. I'm going to what's the word? Clean this up a bit. For right now, I'm just gonna make these all 4 for rotate X. Don't worry about the translates for right now. We're gonna just first worry about the rotation. So I'm gonna select all these curves in the right box. I'm gonna type in number 4 and hit enter. Just to kind of keep that stabilized. And then just only focus on the twist and tilt. Twist meaning rotate Y and tilt meaning rotate Z. Alright. So this is 16. So I'm going to make these peaks, the second peak right here and this third peak right here. I'm going to type in the number 16, hit enter. I'm going to take this peak right here and then this peak right here, or this bottom peak, and I guess not really peak, but this bottom keyframe and this bottom keyframe. I'm going to type in -16 so it kind of matches the other tilt. I'm going to delete at least, let me see, this is down, contact, down, okay, so contact, this is down, up, contact, down. Alright, you know what, I'll just delete the keys in the middle. Delete. And then rotate Z. Okay, good. These should be 0, which is good. I'm going to take this bottom peak and this bottom peak in the valley, I guess, so to speak. I'm going to type in -8. Actually, I'll type in -12. I'm going to take this top peak and let me see. Okay, I'm going to delete this one. This top peak and this top peak, I'm going to type in 12. I'm going to delete the ones in between that are not at the very bottom, except for these, because this is frame 1, this is the last frame. So I don't want to delete those. I'm going to move the handles that are at the value of 0. So the first and last keyframe. And I'm just moving the handles by selecting the handle, pressing W, and then using my left mouse button to move the handle. Alright, so can look at this, how the spline is looking right here. Okay, that's good. I'll delete this one. I don't know how that got there. Now, you don't need to move this handle because this is technically a peak, and so is this, so it needs to ease out, and then this one needs to ease in. The only time you really want to change the handles is when it's in between, so it needs to follow the shape of the spline right here, the curve. Alright. Let me see. I'm gonna leave the translate X for right now just because, yeah, I definitely will zero out the Y translate. Just type in, select all those keys, and in the right box, I'm gonna type in the number Y, 0, sorry, not the number Y. Type in the number 0. I'm gonna hit enter, and let me see, and same thing for translate Z. Select all the keyframes, and in the right box, type in the number 0, and then hit enter. We will clean up translate X later. I just want to see how it looks like without the cleanup, so I know where the hitches are if the translate X is affecting it. Chances are it is, but I just need to double check that for my own sake. Alright, so I'm going to hide the curves just to make the play blast a little bit neater. I'm going to select the camera. I'm going to go to the box for play blast, and I'm going to change the number to 3 so I have another iteration of this, just for compare and contrast. So I'm going to play blast this. It's looking good. I might, let me see. I might zero out actually what we can do without affecting the translate X. A cool, let me go to showing the NURBS curves again. So under show, NURBS curve, I'm going to select the arrow, which is the icon that we've been working on, the control we've been working on. Since I haven't cleaned up translate X yet, I'm going to do what's called muting. What muting does, it hides the values of those attributes so it's not affecting the animation, and then you can always unmute it if you want it to be seen in the animation. So I'm just going to see how it looks like if I do mute it. So mute selected. So under translate X, I highlighted translate X, held down my right mouse button, and I'm going to go to mute selected. So now it turned brown. So now it's muted. So now I'm going to play blast it again, and I'll just do spline 4 here. Play blast. Let me see. Let me do a... it's looking better, actually. I kind of like the wiggle in the spine, like a little bit more of an attitude to it. And some contrapposto in it. It kind of looks like it. It's a weirder rig, because it's IK and not FK, the spine. Alright, I'll dig it. I think for this, it should be good. So what I will do, I'll unmute it. So I'll go to translate. I'm going to right click on translate X again and then unmute selected. I'm going to go back to my graph editor, so Windows Animation Graph Editor. I'm going to select translate X and I'm just going to zero these out. So I'm selecting all the keys, typing in 0. Alright. I can scrub through, see how it's looking. So if I play blast this, I'm going to type in 5, play blast. Let me do a front view. So I'm going to go to orthographic, panels, orthographic, front. I'm just going to, I don't need to change the naming convention. I'll just right click and spline just to see how it looks from the front view. Okay. Obviously my arms are hitchy, but right now I'm not focusing on that as much as it is distracting. Again, I'm going to work on the legs now. And then excuse me, I'm like getting over a cold from my conference. Last day I got sick, so I'm sorry if I'm sniffing or not sounding my normal self. Let me see. Okay, so we've cleaned up the the spine and the hip control. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna just look out for knee pops now and making sure the foot isn't sliding anywhere. So I'll look at it, I'll scrub through it in the side camera. So I'm gonna go to panels, orthographic, left one, because that's kind of the side I like to look from when I'm doing a walk cycle. I like to be able to see the walk going from left to right rather than from right to left. It's just easier to read visually because we read from left to right. So looking at a walk cycle is easier to look at from left to right than from right to left, personally. Just some sorry, just some things to keep in mind when it comes to like uh, looking at things in terms of film. All right, so I'm gonna start off with the left screen left foot, but the character's right foot. So this one right here. All right, I'm gonna look at. Oh shit! Sorry. All right, this one. Okay, I'm gonna go to frame 1. There we go. All right. Okay. So if you notice, it's kind of sliding right here. So what I might have to do is push back the amount of, because he's pretty unbalanced when I'm looking at it now. So I'm gonna ease in the foot roll here, or the, what's it called? The ball roll that we have in this. What's toe heel roll? Let me. Oh. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't use that control. No, I do like this control. Sorry, just kidding. Alright. So I'm going to go to this down keyframe. So it's frame 4 for me. So I'm going to go to my graph editor. I'm going to go to translate Y. I'm going to lower this down. Basically to 0. Let me just scrub through this. Okay. So sorry. And let me see. Okay. And then I just need to fix this toe control. So I will go to toe bend. This is the one I'm looking for. Bring this down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like he's pushing off. Does that make sense? I hope that does. So that's what I mean by, like, double checking foot placement, making sure things aren't sliding when you want to be able to create the illusion of force. So here, bring And this one needs to go a little bit more up now. So, and so now I kind of also don't want this sliding just yet. So I'm going to bring this translate Z one frame over, so it, what's the word? It's kind of staying back there for a little bit longer, one more frame longer. But we're gonna increase the ball roll again, so I'm gonna go to frame 5. And I'm gonna add a keyframe. So to add a keyframe in this attribute, I need kind of this curve selected. I'm going to press the letter I. I'm going to click with my middle mouse button. Notice that holding the letter I get this little target on my graph editor. And I'm going to click with my middle mouse button on the keyframe, on the frame number that I want, which is 5. Click right here. I'm going to press W, hold down the Shift key, and move this frame up. And let me see. What is this bank? I wonder. Before I do anything else. Sometimes you want to play with other. I just want to see if this is like a foot break. No, it's not a break. Okay, never mind. Z, undo, undo, undo. Okay. Alright, let me see. Go to my ball roll. Increase this number. And then now I can increase this height a little bit. So I'm going to select this curve, and so on frame 5, I'm going to hold down the letter I, click with my middle mouse button, and with this new with this new keyframe, I'm going to move this up. And then I'm also going to go to the toe bend here. And again, also on frame 5, I'm going to select this curve, press the letter I, and click with my middle mouse button on and move the toe bend up, and I will move the sorry. And I will actually translate the foot up a little bit more. And move it forward too. Okay. Go back to translate Z. And then right here, I will add a keyframe on frame 4. And press F just to kind of zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to bring this down until it matches. And I pressed auto, so now it'll flatten when it reaches the same amount as this keyframe right here. So now, right, there we go. Bring this a little higher. increase the toe bend a little bit more. I'll press. All right. All right. So that's looking good. But then, if you notice, this is kind of sliding right here. So I'm going to go back to translate Z. And, okay, so that's looking good. Let me just... If I can... Sorry, let me just fix translate Y right there. That's the only thing that needed. Okay. And bring these to 0. I guess I typed that in wrong. 0. There we go. The only thing here is taking like a lot of, so we have contact at frame 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4 frames to that foot roll, which doesn't take that many frames. So I'm gonna go to the foot roll, the ball roll here. So right, where's it? No, it's rotate X. Okay. So it should take one. I'm going to move this keyframe 1 frame to the left. So now it should, boom, there we go. Right. All right. Okay. Let me just go through this just to fix this. So that's looking good. So all that's good. So this should be 0. Oh no. Okay, I'll allow it. Alright, yeah. Alright, so this is looking good. Let me just double check that I did the other foot, the foot roll for that one. Because I think I like stopped halfway. So I'm going back to this foot right here. I'm going to the ball roll. Let me just take this curve, smooth this out a little bit. So that's looking good. Can take this to, let me see how 0 looks like for this keyframe. Oh, nope, don't like it. Okay. I'm going to go. I just see if, yeah. Okay, and now I'm going to go to rotate X here. So 1, 2, and let me just see. I'll take this keyframe and just move it, holding down the shift key, and I'm going to move it 1 frame over. No. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Still have knee pops, but I'll take this ball roll for the foot that I have here. I'm just gonna delete this so it eases in. Alright. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna fix what I have here. I'm gonna match it more with what I have. So this is my contact. I'm gonna lower this keyframe right here. Just a little bit. Decrease that number. This should still be at 0. So I'm going to select this translate Y and type in 0. And I'm going to go to the toe bend and lower this value. So it's more of that push. So bring, and then in the keyframe right after, I'm going to push the ball roll. So I'm going to select the curve under ball roll. I'm going to hold down the letter I, click with my middle mouse button, and increase this value of ball roll. So let me spline this out. There we go. I'm going to go to the toe bend on this same keyframe, which is frame 30 for me. I'm going to select the curve, press I, hold, increase the toe bend so it looks like it's pivoting off the toe. Select this curve too, and just kind of round it out like I did with the other one. Alright. And I'm also going to go to translate. I just want to make sure. Okay. I'm going to move this keyframe here. And also the toe bend one frame over. And now I'm going to go to translate Y. I'm going to move this frame up, press S, whoops, nope. I'm going to select the curve, press I, hold down with my middle mouse button, move this keyframe up, select those curves, press auto just to clean that up on its own. And also go to the Z translate and select this keyframe and push this a couple frames to this one frame back. So up to frame 29. Done. Rotate it a little bit. Select the I pressed S by mistake. Let me just select them. I didn't change my preferences, so to make sure you're no longer adding keys that are in step mode, go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, go to Preferences, under Animation, where it says Tangents. I'm going to go to Default in Tangent, Auto, and then Auto again. So both in and out tangents are auto, and I'm going to hit Save. And there we go. So now when I press S, I won't have that issue anymore. I forgot to do that because I realized I was blocking. So now that this is getting that peel, off, now let me fix this one right here as well. This last foot in the back. So I'm just fixing the peel offs right here. So I'm going to go to translate Y, This is odd. Okay, let's select these curves that are flat right here because for some reason, I made it, I didn't make them 0 and 0 them out. Okay. So I think I've done most of the steps. That's just the last step. That this one and this front step are the last ones I need to do. So I'm going to go to ball roll. I'm going to increase this keyframe right here. I'm going to delete this just to round it out a little bit more smoothly. And I'll go to the toe bend. I'll move these 2 frames forward so now I can bring this down a little so it kind of looks like it's going to start pivoting off from that keyframe. And I'll increase, I'm going to add a keyframe here. I'm going to hold down the letter I, press my middle mouse button, press W, and move this keyframe up by holding down the Shift key. I'll delete this toe bend. And go to the ball roll as well. I'll move the ball roll over. And hold down the letter I. With my middle mouse button, I'm going to click, press W, hold down the Shift key, and move this frame up. Select this keyframe and press Auto. And go back to toe bend and increase this number so it kind of curves in and follows the flow of the foot. Press Auto. Alt middle mouse so I can pan my camera and just make sure this is looking good. Okay. And now the only thing I need to fix is this foot and the planting. Let me delete this key, see how that looks. Okay, yeah, I do like that. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, 1, 2. See if this will help it. So I'm moving this keyframe back. 1, 2. And I'm going to go to the Y keyframe because it's, I'm going to move this keyframe, hold it down, and move it one frame to the left. Reason being is that, like a bouncing ball, you don't slow into your step, you kind of stomp in a way. So I'm going to select these on the right box, make sure it's zeroed out. And then just, I'm going to go back to rotate X. I'm going to select these two curves, the two keyframes, and I'm just going to move them one frame over just to make sure. I might just make this one frame, just cause it's not. There we go. I like this kind of clapping. There we go. I do like that. So I'm going to select this side, this camera. Let me see where it ends. Okay, so I'm going to select the camera. I'm going to play blast just to see how it looks. Oh, okay. Oh, better than I thought. Okay, good. Yeah. Some knee pops. I can fix that later with some stretch and like the knee pull vectors. But overall looking good. I kind of like it's not too much up and down, it's just enough. Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna quickly go to the arms. I would save your file, save scene as file, or increment and save. Continue. So now, you can always go back to it if you need to. So I'm going to now go to the shoulder, which is this arrow key. I'm going to go to animation editor, graph editor. I can't believe I used translates. You know what? I'm going to delete the translates. Delete this. I'm just going to focus on rotations. And I'm going to delete these rotations too. Or zero them out. Okay. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to save. Coming. Hold on.